We welcome folks from the clinical side of things as well as the community side of things. And today's topic is meaningful work and mental health. And that can take on so many different aspects as Chris explores with his clients at APT. Thanks, Chris, for diving in and being the host of this month's topic.
Thanks, Eleanor. It's my pleasure. For those of you who don't know me, I've been at App Foundation for 7 years and human services for about 13 years. And before that, I was a retail manager for 25 years. And that served me very well, having a retail business background to work in employment services and human services. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had. And so to be able to talk about what you do and your work is, it couldn't be better. So I'm really excited about this and can't wait to engage you guys. So there'll be plenty of opportunity, to hear what you're thinking also about this topic that's really near and dear all of us. I remember years ago being I was early on in this work, and I was asked to talk to a bunch of young men who were coming out of prison. And there was a particular group that they all had gang experience. And I thought, oh my God, I feel like I'm being led to the wolves, because I had really very little background with that. And the more I got to thinking about it, you always think about your audience and how you want to talk to them. And, I was kind of kicking off with a few things. And finally I said, look, they tell me that you guys have gang experience. Is that true? Yes, it is. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, working with us, you can join the largest gang in America. I looked at me and I said, there's 148 million of us who go to work every day. And there was a lot of talk about the street and guns and everything. And I said, and if you're so inclined, we have money to buy guns. So it's whatever you get to hook somebody and bring them in. It's because we've placed people in a spectrum of work that would appall most. And yet these are paycheck jobs. One really has to come in here. So my team and I, my 6 other people and myself, who are in this business, I think are some of the most special people in the world because of their ability to open up and have such a broad comfort level and acceptance of meeting people where they are. So I'll tell you what, let's just start with I'm going to have a brief introduction for you. And then we're going to look at the role of employment services at APT, how we're integrated into the community, what's happened last fiscal year, which is from July of 22 through this past June. And we'll look at, some of the contexts and challenges that are coming up for 2024 and what our plans are in working with those folks. To place us in this milieu, know that just in Connecticut, there's 354 temp labor agencies, and that's as of July 14th of this past month. That's from Smart Scraper Business Report. And at the bare minimum, there's 16 state-funded agencies running employment support, managing over 48 back-to-work programs here in New Haven alone. I'm going to come back to some of these points that I'm making for a context. And there's also 3 American job centers in New Haven County, one right here in New Haven, up in Meriden and over in Middletown, and scores of mostly federally funded back-to-work programs that are administered through those American job centers. And some are specific to those who are affected by the opioid epidemic. According to the Connecticut Department of Labor, anybody know how many people are working in this state? Anybody want to venture a guess? There's 3.6 million people who live in Connecticut, and 1,668,000 people have payroll jobs. We have a very low unemployment rate, which is a dubious number. It's how it counts people. But one thing that is a little more accurate is that as of July 29th in this state, 33,000 people applied for unemployment insurance. And the U.S. Department of Labor says that as of June of 2023, there are 70,000 people unemployed in this state. So I'm not sure how they count that and where that other 37,000 comes from the 33,000. That's where we live. And in New Haven, so let's kind of bring it down as we go from the state and the county and down to New Haven. According to the 2020 census from Data USA in New Haven, there's 139,000 inhabitants in New Haven. 90,350 are 16 years or older, so they could be in the workforce. 62,000 of those people are working. I remember being with a bunch of people through the Annie E. Casey Foundation and some other folks that were saying, okay, we're addressing all you folks out there who are in employment services. How can we add 5,000 new jobs to New Haven? And we kicked off from there. So how do we move that 62,000 employed number up to 67,000? And That's where the story gets fun. So in Connecticut, currently, there's more than 100,000 jobs available, and we have 33,000 people filing weekly for unemployment benefits. And the state's labor force participation rate remains more than 2% higher than the US average labor force participation rate. When we look at it even a little further down and look at specific industries, places where we love to place people to work, and I'll show you later the spectrum of where people do go to work. There's an estimated 11,000 manufacturing jobs that are open currently in the state. That's from the Connecticut Manufacturing Report of February 23. And they also said that the single biggest thing that is preventing the manufacturing sector from continuing to grow is really the lack of available workforce. It's just not enough people, they say. So how do we make a difference in all that? Let's go even further down to APT Foundation. So my team and I work for an agency that serves approximately 8,000 unique individuals every year. So I'm going to compare apples to oranges. Let's take Connecticut's 3.7 unemployment rate and impose that on those 8,000 people. So that'll give us 296 unemployed people. And we don't count that. That's not that I know of. I've never seen that number because it's not collected by everybody. But just to think about numbers you're going to see later, it'll help put it in a context. So we can draw an expectation of how many people to employ. So the same thing would be, how can we move that number of getting more people of those 296 employed? Last year, we had 36 individuals obtain work and 6 were enrolled in further education, whether it's credentialing for work or it was higher education. So with those 42 individuals, that's just about 14% of those 296 unemployed. And now when we look at the people we're working for, the profile of the folks that we're serving, I'll just tell you a couple of stories about some of the folks that we're working with and the value added that comes with this. So when we help people get to work, and then one of the most important services I've grown to appreciate is what we call follow along services or job maintenance. Before it was fairly straightforward. You make sure you read your pay stub, make sure you're being paid correctly, you're recording your hours correctly, the proper amount of taxes are coming out, your benefits are in order, you understand your paid time off and how it accrues and how to use it, who to call when you're going to get sick, who do you call out, do you text, and all these things. That is so old school now. For example, last week, I'm with this fellow, we just call him John, and I was covering for one of our folks who's on vacation. This fellow he was in his 4th week of work. He had not collected a penny of his pay yet, and he didn't collect a penny of his pay because he hadn't completed his official new hire orientation online. And to complete the orientation, completing the orientation was a prerequisite for then opening him up to completing the payroll pay card access, which also had to be completed online because most people are paid online. What was interesting about that is he calls up and he says, I'm not going to go to work anymore because I'm not getting paid. And I said, well, that's an easy fix. Let's take care of that. So we met after work in a parking lot that he was comfortable with, and we worked on the hood of a car for an hour and a half with his phone and trying to get through this process until we reached an impasse, which included the emails that they were sending to him. He didn't even have the account set up, let alone have the account in his phone. They had sent it up for him. And he had so much agita from home, and his daughter wouldn't help him anymore. His wife was fit to be tied. And this guy's very proud of saying, I don't do computers, I'm computer illiterate, and I'm going to stay that way. So that's part of where we come in. And part of that time spent with somebody like this is the service value added of the gift of being present. And keep that in mind the entire time, because there's people who sat in the car with me while we're driving over to American Job Center or driving over to interview for a job. And they say, look, I'm a 52-year-old guy and I know where to go and I can arrange the transportation. But that's why I'm sitting in the car with you, because I can't do it by myself. So whether it's the moral support, whatever it is, but it's that gift of presence. It's being present with somebody and walking with them shoulder to shoulder through this entire process. So it's not standing in front of them and pushing them back, holding them back, or pulling them forward, or standing behind them and doing the same, pushing them forward where they don't want to go, or pulling them back. We're walking with them in this journey. So we can't want something more than somebody else wants it, but we can certainly help them understand the options available to them, the acceptable behaviors in the workplace, how to prepare for that, and to carry on and to grow and mature in this field. This person, I said, look, so tomorrow morning we're going to the employers. And we're going to figure it out. So be there at 8 o'clock. I'll be there at 8 o'clock. It's when they open. We did. And it took us almost 2 hours to sort this out. And they had to call corporate. They had to call payroll, what they subcontracted for. And there were so many, there was no way he could have ever navigated this. And he was also very fond of telling me, I'm a difficult guy to work with. I have a, short fuse. I blow up at everybody. I said, well, with me, you've been a gentleman. I can't, whatever, let's just continue on. And we got it fixed. So I think his agita at home is lessened. At least they don't have to deal with him coming home and complaining and not being paid. And I heard from him this morning. I checked in with him. It's been almost 2 weeks and everything's still fine. So here's somebody who's still working, who could have been one of those 33,001 people filing for unemployment this week. A second person is a person that we have served with 2 different employment specialists for over 10 years, maybe 11 or 12 years. I didn't look for sure. And here's a person that is a full-time electrician, but has been in the union and is also one of the first clients of APT Foundation. So he's been on medical assisted treatment for over 30 years, and big changes this last year with moving off of methadone and eventually getting completely clean of all drugs. But he came to me and I said, we'll call him Jack. I said, Jack, what can I possibly do for you? And I said, you have a full-time job. He goes, well, that's not always full-time. We get placed by the union. Those jobs are short-term. They end, or they could be out of state. So I have to live in a hotel for 6 months. I come back, I go on unemployment, then I get the next job and I go. I'd like a full-time job where I have one place to go to, can hang my hat there and, have my benefits consistent and not constantly, go into debt and have all these moments. Well, as I've worked with this fellow for about 5 years, he's now working full-time at a local university as an electrician, and he's making terrific money. The first thing he said to me was, I need to learn how to live this life. And I said, well, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist. Do you have somebody like that? Because I can't give that to you. And he said, what I like about you is I can talk to you. And I feel that you're a straight shooter with me. You're a genuine guy. And I just want to meet, like a touchstone. My word's touchstone. But he said, I just want to meet weekly because there's things I need to talk to you about. And they're related to my finances and other things. And as the onion peeled over the years, I learned about his, being raped by an uncle from the time he was 8 to the time he was 13. I didn't put a trigger alert out there, but using other people's experiences and their language is not always politically correct. And I don't feel the need to clean it up in this sense, because this is what we deal with every day. He's a hoarder. There's all sorts of things going on. He was taking care of a brother who had cerebral palsy, and there was no way this guy could really take care of him. And he was afraid to let social services come into the house because they would see the condition of the house. They would condemn it, take his brother away to an institute, on and on and on and on. I said, well, what I can help you with are referrals, encouragement perhaps, or just listening to you tell me what's going on this week. And in the meantime, the other thing he said, in addition to help me live this life, was, because nobody taught me, was to have a budget. And you'll see that reoccur many times in this next few minutes of this presentation. And that is his budget, to pay people. And he's also somebody who couldn't write checks, couldn't manage a buck, prioritize his spending, or understand cash flow throughout a month. And so with the technology, we were able to put everything on automatic pay. Also call up the IRS and say, look, you got this big debt. Let's work out a payment plan. Let's get this started. That was another one of the things we did. And Eleanor, you mentioned that, the artist who produced the work behind you several years ago. One of the coolest experiences I had working with somebody was probably an early middle-aged woman came in and she said, look, I want a part-time job in an art supply place because I want to buy materials to paint. So we keep talking and like, yeah, we can go down to Halls and we can talk to them. And then it's like, let's figure out a little bit more. Well, what do you paint? How much do you paint? And eventually I thought, now there's more here. Listen, can we go see what you have? So it went into her incredibly crowded apartment with hundreds of painted canvases. So our employment plan became, well, instead of working at Halls and producing more art, why don't you sell your art? So we developed a small business plan, which eventually led to a website, but we also found a place, an apartment complex off of Dixwell Avenue in Hamden that catered to residents who were artists. So they had studios and they had, right? You remember this, Eleanor? So they have studios and galleries, and we negotiated gallery space for a Friday night and Saturday show. And so it took us weeks to put this together because she had to name every canvas, number it. We had to get a flyer together. We had to get the word out. We had to market it. We had, to make something happen. And one of my greatest remembrances is having a picture of her in the middle of Saturday, fanning out like $4,800 in cash in front of her with a big smile. And she did it. And she got the website going. And for several years after that, she was selling her artwork online, and it changed her world. So what do we do? Sometimes you don't know, none of us know what the agenda is or what they're looking for, but you figure it out by talking to them and listening to them beyond just an assessment. There's things you do and you tick the box for the things that we are compliant for in evidence-based models, but we go beyond that to be sure. So here's some notable comments about work. And these, of course, I always love Mark Twain, and work consists of whatever a body is obliged to do, and play consists of whatever a body is not obliged to do. And my absolute favorite, Studs Terkel, most of us have jobs that are too small for our spirits. And we'll go back to that. Keep that in mind. I like Simon Sinek. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. You don't hire skills, you hire for attitude. And you can always teach skills. You can easily judge the character of a person by how they treat those who can do nothing for them. And so many people, even look at us and say, well, how do you get paid for this? Or can we pay you to knock out a resume for us? And so we have to explain to them that, no, this is courtesy of the state of Connecticut and the App Foundation. Those resources are here to serve you. But also going back to that employer, we serve two people. We serve employers and we have clients who want to go to work. So we put work together. We're like a labor agency. We're just serving this particular clientele. And that you don't hire for skills, you hire for attitude. I hear this, my team hears this all the time from employers. We'll hire people who are reliable and accountable and trainable. And we're seeing that more and more. So the real test comes when somebody has felony convictions, they have spotty work history, and many transportation issues and whatnot. Studs, again, hope never trickles down, it always springs up. And this is a favorite one of mine. I say e pluribus unum because I hear this too many times from our folks who are looking for a place to start. I'll take any job, anywhere. I'll live anywhere, anytime. So we always counter with, look, we get real jobs for people. So real positions that are real, with companies that have an address and a phone number and a contact and a way to apply for that job. So many times we start there and start digging to figure out, okay, so you'll take any job anywhere. Will you work outside and not inside? Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, so you won't take any job anywhere. And we continue on from that. Really encapsulates many of what we do. Studs, again, work is about search for daily meaning as well as daily bread, for recognition as well as cash, I love this, for astonishment rather than torpor. In short, for a sort of life rather than a Monday through Friday sort of dine. And we'll come back to that. When we're dealing with folks who are trying to, and you guys be thinking about a quick response of what your job means to you, because one last point to make, I think maybe in a preamble, is, we're dealing with straight up xenophobia and racism. We're dealing with sexism, with classism, which is neither here nor there, but it's everywhere. People feel the pinch of income inequality and wealth, unequal wealth distributions, effects of trauma, and all sorts of things. And so today, when we were talking earlier, when we were thinking about this program, we were talking about what to talk about today when we talk about work. And some of the themes posited, as Eleanor alluded to earlier, were the therapeutic aspects of work, the inclusion of the worker in a community, and away from loneliness and isolation caused by unemployment. To be sure, all those things are very important. I have little experience and even less training in those kinds of areas to talk about that. But one thing that I infer from people that I can relate to and we can work on with them is this malaise that they might feel, or apprehension of going to work, or being overwhelmed by the complexity of the workplace now, or being burned in jobs for a variety of reasons. And the only filter I can put that through is the good old David Graeber, the late anthropologist who in 2018 wrote the book Bullshit Jobs. And in that he postulates the theory of the existence of meaningless jobs and analyzes their societal harm. He contends that over half of societal work is pointless. It becomes psychologically destructive when paired with a work ethic that associates work with self-worth. So he goes on to say that the productivity benefits of automation have not led to a 15-hour work week, as predicted by the economist John Maynard Keynes in 1930, but instead to bullshit jobs, a form of paid employment that is so completely pointless, unnecessary, or pernicious that even the employee cannot justify its existence, though even as a part of conditions of employment, the employee feels obliged to pretend that this is not the case. And he holds rather that the pointlessness of the work grates at their humanity and creates a, quote, profound psychological violence. And we definitely see that there is something to that. And so we're looking to translate work into the positive aspects of it. And we'll talk about the kind of the spectrum from which we introduce work to people who are in that position. Anybody want to jump in there and just say, what does your job mean to you?
Challenge and satisfaction. And they're not always 50-50, depending upon the hour of the day or the day of the week. It could be a 25-75, an 80-20 split. You never know. But yeah, challenging and satisfying.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Andrea. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I agree with Andrea. For me, it usually depends on how hungry I am, Andrea. What the split is, or what I had for, if I had a satisfying lunch. But yeah, to work at a place like APT, to be able to be challenged by the work, to Andrea's point, to be working for fair wages, to have a place to belong, but also to be helping others. I mean, I really consider that quite a privilege, right? I mean, who really gets to do that? To meet someone and ask them, or have them ask me where I work and respond APT Foundation, and to have someone well up and say, APT Foundation saved my life, or APT Foundation saved my son. I mean, it's quite a privilege. So I consider myself very fortunate.
Thank you, Michelle.
I guess could you hear me?
Yes,
I'm
go ahead,
having a
Linda.
Hi everyone. What my job means to me here, working for the APT Foundation, it's been a pleasure. Due to the fact that it's so many people lives that, have been saved. And where I work at over here at the Take Initiative Center, it's like at the entry level of where individuals come, and sometimes they just need someone to talk to before getting into treatment. And if I am that person that they encounter, I try to represent APT Foundation with the highest quality. And I think that, a lot of them do go on to succeed, and it becomes a privilege, just knowing that it's like a stellar to me, like it stands out, and each and every person that represent the APT Foundation, it always come back to us as being one of the treatment programs within the community that has helped and saved a lot of lives. So
Mhm.
I feel like my job has been worth everything that I've put into it to be able to say that, I enjoy doing what I do here.
That's
Thank you.
great. Linda, thank you. Jennifer, please.
I'm Jennifer Carmichael, and I do public relations for Red Rock. And I also have my own business. I've done some freelance writing. And from listening to all of you, I think what you're doing is amazing. And I find with my work, I like the flexibility of it. And I love promoting companies and people and brands. And I think I find my passion in when I can spread what they're doing and really, let other people know what they're doing. And so I don't, I'm not doing anywhere near what you're all doing, but at the same time, I think being able to spread the news of what you're doing and hearing about different people, individuals that you're working with is just amazing. And to tell those stories somehow in some way, I think that's meaningful to me.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, feeling relevant and feeling like your work has meaning. As Michelle said, if you're helping people, that's meaningful to you, terrific. If Jennifer, as your work, allows people to live more into their potential and grow as professionals and engage others in the marketplace in that way. That's a terrific thing. There's that added value again. If we look at some of so here's one fellow who's been working I pulled these from some case notes. He's been working for 6 months and he works for a company this is one of those new jobs that have come out from COVID. And it's out of San Francisco and he hadn't worked for years before he got this job. Now he's working full time and he says the orders come in steadily and I'm keeping quite busy. He's jazzed about this. Another fellow is working for 1.5 years at Lockheed Martin, and he reports being very content with his job. And the union just signed a new contract. He's feeling solid there. And then we have folks like this young man who reported that he was offered full-time employment with Broadcom Communications Technology at their warehouse in Naugatuck, but reported that he feels he cannot handle the responsibility and stress of working full-time at this time. We still stay with them. We still work with them. We start breaking that down. Well, what is stress to you? What does that mean? What contributes to it? What's his work life, what's his home life, his family life, his financial world? What are things or managing his recovery, which always comes first with folks. Where is that? And sometimes we can just help them think through that and get around those barriers, right? So when we're talking to those people, we're looking for, there's a spectrum of things that I've come up with over my years of working here. I'm like, okay, there's 4 types of jobs. And people are going to land on somewhere in this spectrum. And let's say this entry-level job is a survival job only. If somebody comes out of prison, they're in a halfway house, they have 30 days to get a job, or they're going back to prison, they're going to take a job at McDonald's working 3rd shift, right? They probably don't have a high school diploma. They meet the minimum needs. They have gaps in their employment. And we always tell them, look, that you're going up against a younger workforce that looks a hell of a lot better than you. You've got to show the employer you can do the job before you can expect any further consideration. The pay is going to be minimum wage. And then there's a moving forward job, which is a kind of entry-level job to most folks. $17 to $19 an hour, position that you can target and land it pretty much straight away. And you're earning your diploma or GED if you haven't had it, and you have some numeracy. Traditional jobs, you're job ready. You have your high school diploma or you're enrolled in a higher education if needed. You can put Microsoft, fill in other computer literacy proficiencies that are required across the board these days. And this type of job can get you a career job, bam, hits the bottom line within 2 to 3 years. Most of those folks that we have in this salary range have either completed one of the SNAP E+T Education Plus training courses through Gateway Community College or one of the community colleges, because all of them in Connecticut offer this, and it's a pipeline right to work. And if you notice that, the position comes 3 to 5 years after beginning your survival job. So if we're shooting straight with somebody who has a very difficult background or no work history at all, they're 40 years old, or they've been in prison for the last 18 years, they have not completed their GED while in prison or something like this, we got a lot of focusing to do. We have a lot of barriers to remove to get them going again. And we let them know this is going to be a journey. We have 3 to 5 years. Where do you want to start your customized employment plan? Where do you want to start? What first step can we take with you? this individual placement and support, there are 8 principles to this. And I show this because we have to hit this to be funded by the state. So this is an IPS program, individual employment and support. So all the jobs are paycheck jobs. They're competitive employment. They're not under the table. We're always looking to find work that's available from other employers. We're knocking on their doors. I'll talk a little more about that later. Rapid job search, we have them in front of an employer or a hiring manager within the first 30 days of our being together. Integrated services, we're either working with their, the person at the halfway house who can be a gatekeeper that can be negative or positive for them, a mental health service provider, or a clinician at one of our clinics. Where is this person at? Where are they going? How can we pull together in the same way? Again, benefits planning, it's huge. People are struggling with managing the personal finances with heavy debt and with, or maybe benefits, and they're scared to go to work because they have benefits. And we talk about how we can manage all of that. Zero exclusion. You want a job, you want to come work with us. No one's excluded. Time unlimited supports. That's at follow along services again. So it could be like we talked about with John, with just getting him started to get access to his pay card and complete some of those basic things. Or it's people that we worked with for years who are working 2 or 3 jobs and very successful at it. And worker preferences, we listen to what they want, okay? Because we don't want to push everybody into going to McDonald's or going to Amazon or something. So we're really going to listen. So we're ensuring that, we meet people where they're at. We honor their placement and their career pathways where they want to go. We connect people to a broad array of services around the city and the state, where needs be within somewhere in that 4 types of job spectrum. There's also a lot of people with entrepreneurial ambitions, so they don't want to work for somebody else. And we look at web marketing or enhancements of social media presence with a bricks and mortar business, surprisingly, like barbershops and things like this. It's amazing how many people are in, doing hair, male and females, and how important that is for them to develop their own business. And so we work closely with SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives, for that. And also anybody with physical or mental disabilities or developmental disabilities, could be blind or deaf, hard of hearing. We partner up with the Department of Rehabilitative Services in the state to do that. So here's an example of the latest entrepreneur to hit our, so she's working with Sue Feldman, who's somebody we partnered with, who's a clinician in one of our clinics, Sue uses art and recovery, and naturally we get them over to SCORE, and they're looking how to put their product, on the website for sale. Internally, we administer an APT scholarship, which Lynn Madden has generously endowed at least $25,000 a year for people looking to go back to school or work. And this was started back by a nurse, Bernadette Schumann, in 1998, I think it was. People in recovery for opioid addiction could not get a Pell Grant. And so we've put out, I don't know, around $200,000 now. And scores of people have received this. So my team and I administer that. We do voter registration. We're compiling all service events and activities all the time of what's going on. We're in the community meetings, and I could write a short novel on my experiences of 12, 13 years just at the Hill South community meetings. Wow, what a vibrant, challenging time that's been. We're in the Chamber of Commerce, 2 chambers of commerce, Quinnipiac and New Haven. Myself or somebody on my team is always at the area job fairs, and we partner with 20 temp agencies in the area of those 354 that are in the state. And there's where Linda was talking about. So we co-manage with Marrakesh and Goodwill of Southern New England, a drop-in center, the Taking Initiative Center, which is on Whaley Avenue, right where the boulevard, just west of the boulevard. So people who are actively using, maybe experiencing homelessness and not engaged in traditional services. That's some of our first contact with people. And I'm just tickled that my team has gone along with me and others to lobby our General Assembly persons through the Community Nonprofit Alliance. So for last year, let's take a look at what happened last year, and we'll move you along here. We had 321 referrals. About a third of those were enrolled in services. So not everybody who's referred to us actually enrolls in the services. And of that, 36 individuals were hired at 33 separate businesses. I can drop those 33 separate businesses into the chat. 4 were enrolled in skills credentialing, and self-reported wages from those 36 people over the last 12 months while they were working with us was $613,000. So that's up a little bit from the previous fiscal year. We had quite a turnover with COVID, and also we're down a program that went elsewhere. I like to use with the professor I worked with at Quinnipiac, I said, what could I use as a conservative multiplier effect of that $613,000? And he said a very conservative turn of 3 would be, you could run with that. And so I think that $1.8 million of generated into the economy that my team and I put out is pretty good. That's our contribution anyway. The context with which we're working in is, so it's working with that IPS model. It's working with the folks that we have, all the services that are available. We don't want to recreate wheels that are already out there, already built. But about a year ago, my CEO came to me and said, I want you guys in AVS to employment services to come up with ways to have people experience recovery in other aspects aside from just reduced drug use, and be bold, figure some things out and develop some novel job readiness supports, whatever, fill in the blank. But I want in there, I want micro lending in there, and I want to focus on women. So, okay, so that was my marching orders. And so how do we start transforming lives these ways? So Margot's on the screen, and I wasn't going to go down this hole, but we initially were in contact with Margot Walsh, who runs Mainworks. Look them up online and you will be blown away. So we were looking for a way to engage them in a joint business venture, putting men and women laborers who work in the construction industry, but making certain that they were housed, connecting with them from the time they left prison, that in the halfway house, in whatever housing situation they were, that we'd cover their rent until their first checks came in. We'd help them manage their funds. We would see that they had whatever mental health or substance abuse or medical services that they needed at that time. And so she was one of our best partners. Some health issues on my part slowed that down and made us rethink it. And there's the phase 2 of developing an enrichment center, an employment and enrichment center for women with children, and focusing on that and microloans of them going back to work or figuring out a way to enter the workspace. That phase 2 is still going on. So we're adjunct to, I won't read all this grade to you, but so we're adjunct services to the clinical treatment here at APT. And we have taken a good hard look at that, just status quo supported employment model that's around, and try to enhance it in many different ways. We've noticed that the environment has changed so much with COVID, and we're now beginning, my team and I are beginning a full frontal assault, if you will, on meeting employers again, touring their workplaces, having them come in and present to us and other employment specialists that are in the city. And we're dragging clients to hiring events, encouraging them to go and being with them in that moral support position, and helping them through that initial commitment and getting through the doors, and then shaking somebody's hand and getting an application, and then maybe start filling it out on the spot. And we're noticing that there's a lot of pipelines that are created even more efficiently and more aggressively with more resources behind them than ever before, particularly in construction, manufacturing, health, particularly in New Haven, IT and logistics. And we're finding, if we go to that next point in parentheses, the computer literacy, transportation, mail order are big right now. So that transition is requiring that, that set of skills. And we're looking at people that have transferable skills or are trainable in that way. And another thing that we've noticed is COVID impoverished a lot of people, knocked a lot of people out of their houses. So for example, the guy that I met 2 weeks ago, John, also has a son who was looking for work. And this is something that we do is called the 2-generation approach, and that's enhanced support services. So we're also targeting children in the same household, try to interrupt that cycle of poverty. And we got his kid a job two at the same place that his dad was working. So, so the micro lending, we're working with Dr. Annie Harper at Yale University with that. Worked with her for many, many years on personal financial management. And this new recovery finance program here in New Haven is something that we are intimately involved with and we'll be working with over the next 4 years. Taking care of their money, continue with the chamber business partners. Two other things I'll touch on in a minute. So you got to have people with people and that peer support. We're working with the Ford Clinic or the Forensic Drug Diversion Clinic. And these guys are taking people out of prison and other places in town and in recovery, training them to be interns in places like the App Foundation and being recovery coaches and whatnot. And a client will tell a peer something more intimate that is a barrier to their work or to their recovery or something like that, quicker and more directly than they will an employment specialist or a case manager. So they're very important to have in this equation of always having that person nearby. You need somebody on your team. Another program at this point with financial coaching that's available, and that's with the JP Morgan Chase folks. So we're strengthening so going forward, we're strengthening a lot of these partnerships that we depend on for people. So the computer literacy and numeracy skills that's provided by a nonprofit, privately funded group here in town called the Center for Adaptive Learning. And, anybody who's computer illiterate and wants to learn, we can have them matriculate into that course, 4 days, 12 hours, and they walk out of there with a renovated laptop or a desktop computer. And if they help renovate that computer, they get a $5 gift certificate. I had people renovate 9 computers to get $45 extra in their pocket. The faith, so the next line that's not bold, the faith-based folks, we just started going out and asking people in churches, synagogues, temples, things like this, hey, would you be interested in outreach with us to help pick up the costs of small things that people need that are barriers to work? So if somebody comes to us, like they don't have their ID or they don't have their social security card, they might cost them $25-30 to get the driver's license, but you need that government issued photo ID to go to work, right? For your I-9 documents. So those processes, we're trying to get other people to help us with that, all the way down to a haircut. We have barbers here in the neighborhood that will do that, provide that stuff. And then in transportation below, getting people to and from work, there's a group in Hamden, the Interfaith Caregivers, that does nothing but shuttle people to work and doctors, school, whatever. If you live in Hamden, we work with VAO. Michelle has worked intimately with all the transportation services around. And of course, APT does have its own client support vehicles. So that's going on. So we try to track this stuff as best we can, but the motivational interviewing, talking to people again and again and again, and asking the questions, and listening to how they respond helps us formulate what the next step is going to be. That's our philosophy. So Margot, I stole this from you. If you see a problem, walk right in the middle of it, see what you could do. And I've always felt that, but she put it in words when I saw her present at Yale several months ago. And then you think about, okay, so now that I've done something, did it work? Do I try something different? Do I add to it? Do I take away? And what others can I get to help me with doing this? Also, another Margot, a good job makes all the difference. I would always like to say, I believe in people until they believe in themselves, but a good job does make all the difference. And there's an awful lot of value in that. Whew, still with me? The physicist Stephen Hawking said, okay, if you, in the scientific world, if you publish a book and for every formula you put in there, you're going to lose half your readership. So I'm going to lose half my readership right now by saying E equals MC squared. And I thought, I got so many numbers in this, I'm going to lose everybody. God love you for being here. So
no, you balanced it with the stories, Chris, and talking about, all of these pieces that add up to the meaning behind work and the changes that can be made in people's lives with some, push points on exactly where people are, starting with where people are and allowing them to, working with them as they set their own goals and tell you what their boundaries are, identifying what obstacles stand in their way, and then enlisting so many different community partners and helping to remove those obstacles. It's really moving.
Yeah.
Folks have comments that they'd like to, I've been taking up space in the chat, so anybody want to take themselves off mute and pitch in verbally here now? We have a comment that was made about whether any of the clients might be interested in telling their story. It's dicey to invite people to be full on, face and voice as an apt client, but if that's ever an option, we certainly have publications and press outlets that would be interested in hearing from them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like having people tell their stories, and there's reasons for people not to in this situation. You don't want to out themselves, right? If you're a recipient of medical assisted treatment for substance abuse, there's a lot of stigma that goes along with mental health disorders, let alone substance abuse disorders. So it takes a special person. There are people that we work with, and I'll say, hey, you want to show up to a group? You want to talk? We're going to introduce our program to a bunch of people at an intensive outpatient group, or we're going to whatever the situation is. Would you want to go there? And I know you're working on your time. I could give you like $50 gift certificate or something as a token for our appreciation. And they're usually so spot on. They're like, I can't wait to do that. And then you work with them for several years, and all of a sudden they come out there and they will tell people things that you can't believe just came out of their mouth. That they hit hard with what it took to recover and to get into the job and the sacrifices they made. And you look at that person, oh my gosh, the growth that took place. It's just really remarkable, the human spirit there. Hey, for grins, I'm going to put in the chat. Here's all the jobs. That's where everybody got jobs for us last year. Just gives you an idea of the breadth and the spectrum of it. And here's one other fun thing that deals with addressing systemic discrimination and just working in an unlevel playing field. And I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but I went through this a long time ago, and it was remarkable. So that appendix, the appendix D is the job placement in the chat. And the next one is Archie Bunker's Neighborhood. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but there's colleges that use this to this day. And it's a game that sets up the structural, cultural, and economic and ethnic disparities and in America. And you try to make it. And I remember people saying, my God, I'm never going to make it. I'm not going to get over. What's up with this? And like, yeah, that's the world. That's the world you're dealing in. So we still have to keep that in mind when somebody's hitting that wall. The power of water. We got to figure out a way around that wall, over it, through it, under it, something like that, and how to readjust that the pain of discrimination, of being disenfranchised, of not having place at the table. Those things are very important to people, and that's where a lot of those people feel that's a bullshit job. I'm not going to do it, and yet I want to be a part of this because they're sitting there for a reason. They're just trying to find that foothold. So I've pushed it to the last 3 delicious minutes of our hour.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
It's very informative. You gave me more than a 101 about what APT does. So it was very illustrative, and your enthusiasm is remarkable and refreshing. And I'm sure the people that you serve and lead in serving others, it really makes the day better. So thank you.
Thanks, Megan. That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm going to drop you may have heard of a match. It's a manufacturing accelerator. Okay, good.
We're engaging them one-on-one over in Fairhaven for sure.
I'm
Thank you
so
for
glad
that.
to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice.
And one of the things Match is doing is setting up, as you know, but for the benefit of others on the call, manufacturing shifts that are friendly to parents with kids in school, or for a variety of reasons, they may be caregivers, but like 9 to 2 p.m. kind of shifts, and bilingual, and just making entry-level manufacturing jobs and assembly jobs accessible.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. It's makes our load lighter knowing that there's other people pulling in the same direction.
Isn't it? And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure, I'm sure they
Yeah.
would say the
Hope.
same about you. So yeah, that's community in a nutshell, right?
That's Turkle. Hope rises, it doesn't come.
Yes. Well, thanks so much to everyone who made the time to come. It really wouldn't be the same without you. And we will plan to continue this conversation. One of the reasons we do these forums is to have these jumping off points. APT also has a podcast that Lynn will be stocking with deeper dives into various topics and thought leadership. And this is a very big subject and it'll be interesting. It sounds like really good and exciting new chapters of the vocational services program are right around the corner. So we look forward to that, Chris. And thank you for putting together this work.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Have a
you.
sparkling afternoon.